The sky above Rome is pale, a soft silvery blue that promises warmth but offers only stillness for now. You are in the Suburra, a dense, bustling neighborhood in the heart of the city. The kind of place where walls are always close and footsteps echo from every direction. The air is heavy with the mingled scents of last night's cooking fires, fresh bread from the baker's stall, and the ever-present dust of the city. Somewhere nearby, a vendor begins to roll up the canvas on his shop front. Woolen garments, bronze trinkets, oil jars, simple things for everyday people. This is where Gaius Julius Caesar was born. Not in a grand palace, but in the midst of Rome's hum and throng. The Iuli family were ancient noble, even but not wealthy by the time of Caesar's birth in 100 BCE. They claimed descent from Venus herself through Aeneas, the legendary Trojan prince. It was a prestigious lineage, but prestige does not buy comfort. The streets of the Suburra were narrow. Wooden upper stories leaned out above the alleys, casting shade but also lending a slight sense of claustrophobia. Apartments stacked upon one another insularly housed families of varying means. Some were crumbling, some smelled of mildew. But this was Rome's lifeblood, its daily rhythm, its noise and smell and humanity. Imagine young Caesar stepping out of his home just after dawn, his tunic carefully belted, his hair oiled and combed. He walks past neighbors who nod politely. Some call him Iuli Boy. Others glance at him with curiosity. Even as a child, he carries himself with a certain stillness, a certain precision. His father, also named Gaius Julius Caesar, is a praetor, a judge, a respected man in Rome's senatorial class. He is not among the most powerful, but he moves within those circles. His mother, Aurelia, is known for her intelligence, her discipline, and her quiet command of the household. In many ways, it is she who shapes the early years of her son. Education begins early in Rome. Reading, writing, memorization of law and poetry. Rhetoric is prized above all else, the ability to speak well, to persuade. The spoken word is a Ramon's blade and shield. At home, Caesar learns from a pedagogue, a Greek slave or freedman who teaches him not just grammar and numbers, but how to think, how to listen, how to hold his posture and voice steady. He studies the works of Homer, even though Homer's epics belong to another land. He recites lines from Ennius, Rome's own poet. He learns the 12 tables, the foundation of Roman law, and watches his father conduct affairs with a cool sense of order. But beyond books and scrolls, Caesar also observes the rhythm of Rome. He walks past the Forum, where merchants argue over coin and contracts. He watches the Curia, the Senate House, from a distant stone walls that seem to hum with importance. He passes temples where priests in white robes carry laurel wreaths and sacred fire. And he sees the contradiction at Rome's heart, order and ambition, tradition and unrest. Children play with wax balls and wooden hoops. Women gather at fountains to draw water and exchange gossip. And always, always, the murmur of voices, the endless discussion, argument, plea, and praise of a city in motion. Caesar is not yet powerful, he is not yet feared or loved, but he is present. Watching, learning, the habits of power form slowly like sediment layering in the Tiber's quiet depths. Back at home, the day continues in ritual. The family eats simply bread dipped in oil, olives, cheese, perhaps some fish. The lararium, the small household shrine, is tended with care. Incense is lit, prayers murmured. The ancestors remembered. This is not superstition. This is identity. The Romans believe that the dead walk alongside the living, that each home has its own guardians, its own sacred rhythm. And in that rhythm, young Caesar is shaped not into a warrior, not into a tyrant, but into a Roman, one who understands duty, one who respects the weight of his name, even if that name currently carries little fortune. As the sun rises higher, casting warm light across terracotta rooftops and marble columns alike, life continues. The shoemaker begins tapping leather. The baker needs fresh dough. A group of clients gathers outside a nobleman's door, waiting to pay their respects in exchange for favors and coin. And somewhere among them, walking quietly beside his mother or his tutor, is Caesar, still a boy, still soft-spoken, but already feeling the weight of something stirring beneath his feet. The city breathes, the crowd murmurs, and above it all, the eagles of Rome glide silently on the morning wind. Now, let the sound of those wings fade softly. Let the dust settle behind us, because in our next chapter, we will see how this boy's world begins to shift, how loss and tradition begin to carve him into something new. The sun is higher now over Rome. Its light falls gently across tiled rooftops, gilding them in soft gold. The streets have filled vendors calling out their wares, children weaving between the legs of passing donkeys, the distant ring of a smith's hammer echoing from an alley. For young Caesar, this is the familiar music of the city. But soon, the harmony of his early life will change. In the year 85 BCE, Caesar is just 15. It is the year his father dies suddenly. No long illness to prepare the family. One day, a praetor in good standing, the next gone. The loss is personal, of course, the absence of a father's voice at the household table, the stillness of his place at the morning ritual to the household gods. But in Rome, death is never only private. It is political. Without his father's active presence in public life, the family's position becomes more precarious. A noble name still counts for much, but it needs constant tending alliances, favors, public acts to keep it alive. For Caesar, still barely a young man, this is his first experience of the way fortune can shift without warning. His mother, Aurelia, steps into this gap with quiet force. She is a woman of dignity and influence, respected even among Rome's demanding elite. Aurelia ensures her son's education continues without pause, but she also begins to weave him more deeply into the web of Roman politics and society. Life in Rome is full of patronage, the careful exchange of loyalty for support. The Julius family may not be the richest, but their connections run deep. Through family ties, Caesar is linked to Marius' faction, a political alliance that will shape his youth in subtle, enduring ways. Gaius Marius, his uncle by marriage, is one of Rome's most celebrated generals, but also one of its most divisive political figures. He represents the populares, a political movement favoring reforms that benefit the common people, often in direct opposition to the Optimates, the conservative senatorial elite. This is more than distant political noise for Caesar. The rivalry between these factions will soon erupt into violence, and the young man will find himself, willingly or not, standing on one side. Before that storm arrives, there are still years of study. At 16, Caesar begins formal training in rhetoric, the art of persuasive speech. He learns to structure arguments with precision, to choose words like a craftsman selects tools, and to deliver them with confidence that masks uncertainty. In Rome, such skills are as essential as a soldier's sword. His tutors drill him in memory exercises, the kind that require him to hold long passages of poetry or law in his mind until he can recite them without hesitation. He learns not only to speak, but to read a crowd, to sense when to press his point, and when to let silence speak for him. Through all of this, the city continues its daily rhythm around him. The smell of fresh bread in the market, the shouts of mule drivers, the calls of water sellers in the heat of the afternoon. But on the horizon, there is another presence, one that will soon dominate his life. Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Sulla is a ruthless general and politician, aligned with the Optimates. He and Marius, Caesar's family ally, have been locked in a struggle for power that has already spilled blood in the streets. By 82 BCE, Sulla marched on Rome. Marius is dead, but his supporters are hunted down. Loyalty to his faction becomes dangerous. Caesar is now 16, nearly 17, and suddenly his family connections put him at risk. His marriage to Cornelia, the daughter of one of Marius's allies, cements his place in the populares' camp. To Sulla, this is unacceptable. He orders Caesar to divorce Cornelia. This is the moment where the boy begins to disappear and the man begins to take shape. Caesar refuses. It is a dangerous defiance. Sulla has had men executed for less. His refusal forces him into hiding. He moves quietly from place to place, never sleeping too long in one bed, relying on friends and distant relatives for shelter. He learns firsthand what it means to live at the mercy of greater powers and to survive them. Eventually, through the intervention of influential allies, perhaps out of respect for his youth, perhaps because eliminating him is not yet worth the trouble, Sulla relents. But the warning is clear. Rome is not a safe place for Caesar. And so, in the quiet early mornings and long, watchful nights of this period, he begins to think differently. Not only about survival, but about control, how it is gained, how it is lost, and how one might hold it in their own hands. It is said, Sulla remarked, after sparing him, that in Caesar he saw many Mariuses, and that one day this young man would prove dangerous to the nobility. Perhaps it was insight, perhaps only a passing comment. But for Caesar, it is the first shadow of a destiny that will stretch far beyond his youth. For now, though, he remains a young man shaped by sudden loss, political danger, and the knowledge that standing firm comes with a price. We leave him here on the cusp of adulthood, his life already marked by the themes that will follow him to the end: loyalty, risk, and the quiet resolve to chart his own course. In our next chapter, we will follow Caesar beyond the walls of Rome, into the wide, open reaches of the Mediterranean, where service, exile, and the sea will begin to teach him in new ways. The streets of Rome grow distant now. Their close-pressed walls, their clatter of cartwheels on stone, their constant hum of voices, all begin to fade, replaced by the open air and the long, rolling horizon of the Mediterranean. For a young man like Caesar, leaving Rome in these years is not a matter of leisure or curiosity. It is necessity. His position in the city remains uncertain. Though Sulla has relented, the shadow of political danger still lingers. Opportunities at home are limited, and for an ambitious youth, service abroad is both safer and filled with possibility. In 81 BCE, Caesar accepts a post as a staff officer and aide to the governor of Asia, a Roman province in the rich lands of western Anatolia, in what is now Turkey. It is his first real step into Rome's military and administrative world. The journey itself is long. Imagine the slow rhythm of a Roman ship, its sails creaking, the waves of the Tyrrhenian Sea lapping against the hull. Days pass with the steady wind, nights under a canopy of stars unfamiliar to the city-born. Along the coastlines, fishing villages glow with small fires, and the smell of salt and tar lingers in the air. In Asia, the pace of life is different from Rome's constant urgency. The towns are a mix of Greek and Roman influences, whitewashed columns, open-air marketplaces, statues of both local and imperial gods. Here, Caesar begins to observe another kind of power, the reach of Rome across distant lands. Roman law, Roman soldiers, Roman tax collectors, all layered atop older cultures, older ways of life. During this posting, Caesar experiences his first taste of military action. One episode stands out: the siege of Mytilene, a rebellious city on the island of Lesbos. Rome sends forces to bring it to heel. Caesar serves not in the front ranks, but as part of the command staff. Still, the siege teaches him lessons about discipline, patience, and the way war can stretch out in days of waiting as much as moments of action. It is also here, according to later accounts, that Caesar earns the civic crown, a wreath of oak leaves awarded to those who save the life of a fellow Roman in battle. The details are lost to time, but the honor is rare, and the memory of receiving it will follow him through his career. After the campaign, his travels continue. The Mediterranean is a web of ports and islands, each with its own smell, its own dialect, its own rhythm. At Rhodes, Caesar intends to study rhetoric under the famed teacher Apollonius Molon, a man known for shaping orators who could sway both courts and crowds. But the journey to Rhodes brings another test, one that will become one of the most famous episodes of his early life. Somewhere in the Aegean Sea, his ship is taken by pirates. They are Cilician pirates, feared in these waters for their boldness. They take Caesar and his companions to a small island, demanding a ransom. The story, as it comes to us, is one of those moments where the personality of the future Caesar flickers into view. He does not act as a frightened hostage. Instead, he treats the pirates with a calm, almost audacious confidence. When they demand 20 talents of silver, he tells them they are undervaluing him and insists they ask for 50. While the ransom is gathered, he spends his captivity reading, writing, and joining in the pirates' games, warning them without anger that when he is free, he will return and see them punished. It is said the pirates laughed, but Caesar, once released, does exactly as promised. He raises a small force, hunts them down, and has them executed in accordance with Roman law. Not from cruelty, but from the conviction that Rome's authority cannot be mocked without consequence. By the time he finally reaches Rhodes, Caesar's reputation has grown, not for commanding legions, not yet, but for the way he carries himself. He has shown that even far from Rome, even in danger, he holds to a sense of command, a quiet assurance that bends events toward him rather than the other way around. In Rhodes, his studies under Apollonius Molon deepen his skill in rhetoric. Molon emphasizes clarity over flourish, precision over ornament and approach that will later define Caesar's speeches and even his writings. His style becomes concise, persuasive, confident without being overbearing. And yet, while he studies, the world beyond Rhodes continues to shift. The Mediterranean remains unsettled. Political tensions in Rome simmer. The Republic's reach is wide, but its unity is fragile. By the time Caesar returns to the city, he is no longer the boy who walked through the Suburra with a tutor at his side. He has seen foreign provinces, endured political exile, fought in sieges, faced pirates, and honed his voice into a sharper tool. But his return is not to be one of quiet reintegration. Rome is stirring again, the factions are restless, and the path ahead will draw him deeper into the complex weave of alliances and rivalries that define the Republic. In our next chapter, we will step into the heart of Roman political life and see how Caesar begins to shape his place within it, not yet as a general, but as a young man learning the delicate art of Roman power. The city awaits him. After months abroad, after salt-stained days on ships, the glare of foreign seas, and the echo of Greek voices in Rhodes, Caesar returns to Rome with the calm confidence of someone who has seen more than his years might suggest. It is the early 70s BC. Rome is alive with movement. Merchants shout their offers in the forum. Senators in their white togas, edged in purple, walk in slow pairs beneath the shadow of the basilicas. Petitioners stand in the open air, awaiting the ear of a magistrate. The air hums with the slow, deliberate machinery of the Republic. For Caesar, this is not a simple homecoming. It is a re-entry into a world where every handshake, every nod, every word can be a step upward or a step into obscurity. Politics in Rome is a network, and networks must be navigated with care. He begins not with grand titles, but with visibility. In 69 BCE, he wins election as military tribune, a relatively modest office, but an important first Romam Cursus Honorum, the traditional ladder of Roman political careers. It is a post that keeps him close to the army, but more importantly, it places him in the public eye. That same year, life brings another turning point. His beloved wife, Cornelia, dies while still young. The loss is deeply personal, yet even here politics intrudes. As part of her funeral rites, Caesar delivers a public eulogy not only for Cornelia, but for her father Cinna, a leading figure in the popularis cause. Such speeches are more than memorials. They are performances of loyalty, declarations of political alignment. By honoring Cinna so openly, Caesar reaffirms his position within the popularis faction. Later that same year, his aunt Julia, the widow of Gaius Marius, also dies. Her funeral is another opportunity for Caesar to speak, and this time he speaks of Marius himself. The name is still controversial. His memory is despised by many in the conservative Optimates, but Caesar does not shy away. He praises Marius's achievements and even dares to display his image in the Forum, a gesture heavy with meaning. It is a quiet, measured defiance wrapped in the solemnity of mourning. Through these acts, Caesar earns notice not only for his words, but for his willingness to stand where others might tread lightly. He is not reckless. His speeches are crafted to avoid direct provocation, but he makes it clear he has chosen his side. From here, his rise is steady. In 68 BCE, he is elected questor, the first official step on the cursus honorum. The position involves financial administration, often in a provincial setting. It is not glamorous, but it is essential. A questor manages resources, accounts, and the logistical underpinnings of governance. For Caesar, it is also an opportunity to observe the mechanics of Rome's provincial control, how taxes are collected, how resources flow back to the capital, how local politics intertwine with imperial demands. During his questorship, Caesar serves in Hispania Ulterior, the southern reaches of the Iberian Peninsula. The land is broad, skies vast. Here, the rhythms are slower than in Rome, the air is scented with olive groves and the salt of the Atlantic winds. He sees firsthand the challenges of ruling distant territories, the need to balance firmness with diplomacy, the tensions between Roman settlers and local populations, the quiet persistence of resistance beneath outward obedience. When he returns to Rome, his standing has grown not dramatically, but measurably. He is no longer simply the young man with a famous name and dangerous connections. He is an office holder, a man with experience both abroad and in the city's public life. It is in these years that he also forges crucial alliances. Among them is a friendship with Pompey, a rising general of enormous popularity, and with Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. These relationships are not yet the cornerstone of his power, but their beginnings are here, in conversations beneath colonnades, in shared political aims, in the unspoken understanding that cooperation can serve all. And yet, despite these steps forward, Caesar's position is not unassailable. The Republic is volatile. The Senate is divided. Public opinion shifts like the Tiber's current calm one day, turbulent the next. For now, his task is clear: to keep moving upward without drawing the kind of attention that could bring him down. To speak boldly enough to be remembered, but not so boldly that he is silenced. To build connections, reputation, and a base of support. By the end of this phase of his life, Caesar has completed the first essential steps toward higher office. He has proven himself a capable speaker, a competent administrator, and a man unafraid to align himself openly with the populares. The city knows his name, not merely as a legacy of his ancestors, but as a living presence in the Forum. But there is a ceiling he has not yet broken. The greater offices, praetor, consul, are still ahead. The loyalty of the legions is not yet his. The provinces that could enrich him, both in coin and in glory, remain in other men's hands. All of that will come. But first, Caesar must navigate the increasingly dangerous interplay of Rome's politics, where alliances are fragile, and today's friend may be tomorrow's rival. In our next chapter, we will follow him into the 60s BCE. When the stakes grow higher, the alliance is more intricate, and the city begins to sense that this man is not simply another senator climbing the ladder, but someone willing to reshape it entirely. The Rome that greets Caesar in the mid-60s BCE is a city both restless and ambitious. Its marble temples gleam in the sun, its markets overflow with goods from across the known world, and yet beneath the prosperity runs a deep current of rivalry, greed, and political maneuvering. Caesar is now an established figure in public life. His path along the cursus honorum has begun in earnest, and each new step will require not only skill, but the careful weaving of alliances. In 65 BCE, Caesar is elected curule aedile, one of the officials responsible for public works, games, and the upkeep of the city. It is an office with real visibility, for the aedile's duties often bring them into direct contact with the people, repairing roads, maintaining public buildings, and above all, staging the grand spectacles that Rome's citizens expect. Caesar understands the value of such visibility. He invests heavily in games and public entertainments, sometimes spending beyond his means to ensure the people remember his generosity. These spectacles are not simply diversions, they are political theater. Each event is a chance to bind the public closer to him, to let them see his name not only on decrees, but in moments of shared enjoyment. This generosity comes at a cost. By the end of his aedileship, Caesar is deeply in debt. But in Rome, debt is not always a weakness if managed well, it is a tool. And Caesar manages it with the quiet support of allies, such as Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in the city, who recognizes in Caesar a man worth investing in. The following year brings a more solemn honor. Caesar is elected Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome, a position of immense prestige. The election is fiercely contested. Caesar's victory surprises many, and it cements his status as more than a passing figure in politics. Religion and politics in Rome are intertwined, and as Pontifex Maximus, Caesar gains both a powerful platform and a degree of protection from his rivals. As the decade advances, Rome itself is changing. The Republic's reach stretches from Spain to Syria, its armies commanded by ambitious generals whose fame rivals that of the Senate itself. Two men stand out above the rest, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, or Pompey the Great, fresh from a string of military victories, and Crassus, whose wealth underpins much of the city's political life. Caesar is not yet their equal in rank or resources, but he sees opportunity in their mutual distrust. Pompey and Crassus are powerful, but their rivalry keeps them from working together. If they could be persuaded into an alliance, and if Caesar could position himself as the bridge between them, the three together might dominate Roman politics. This idea will soon take form, but first, Caesar's own political career continues its upward climb. In 62 BCE, he serves as praetor, an office that brings judicial authority and, often, a subsequent provincial governorship. It is during this year that he also faces a test of personal resilience. While serving as praetor, Caesar becomes embroiled in the aftermath of the Catilinian conspiracy, an alleged plot to overthrow the Republic. He opposes the summary execution of the accused without trial, arguing that even in crisis, the rights of Roman citizens must be respected. It is a position that aligns him with the populares, but also risks alienating powerful conservatives in the Senate. His speech on the matter is measured, calm, but it makes clear his belief that the law should not bend to political expediency. After his praetorship, Caesar is appointed to govern Hispania Ulterior, a vast, rugged province in the far west of the Republic. Here, his debts are pressing. The law forbids a magistrate from leaving Rome until creditors are satisfied. Once again, Crassus steps in, providing the financial guarantee needed for Caesar to depart. In Hispania, Caesar gains his first independent military command. He campaigns against local tribes, not with reckless aggression, but with calculated force that brings swift results. Victories in the field bring spoils, and spoils bring wealth enough to pay his debts and return to Rome a man transformed. He is no longer merely a skilled politician. He is now a commander with proven success, his name carried home by soldiers who have seen him lead. It is at this point that Caesar's ambitions sharpen into a clear goal, the consulship. The consulship is the pinnacle of the cursus honorum, the highest elected office in the Republic, and a launching point for even greater power. But in Rome's competitive political climate, winning it will require more than personal reputation. It will require allies. On his return in 60 BCE, Caesar moves quickly. He brokers a private agreement with Pompey and Crassus. Pompey gains land for his veterans. Crassus gains support for tax reforms favorable to his business interests, and Caesar gains their backing for his bid for consul. This understanding, later known as the First Triumvirate, is not a formal legal body, but it is a powerful alignment of interests, one that will shape the Republic in the years to come. With their support, Caesar secures the consulship for 59 BCE. His victory is decisive, but it also places him in a delicate position. The consulship offers enormous authority for a single year, yet it is also watched closely by rivals eager to see him falter. He enters office with the same calm precision that has marked his rise thus far. The road ahead will bring both triumph and confrontation. But for now, he stands at the highest point Rome can offer a man through the ballot. Beyond it lies the vast, uncertain expanse of what he can do with that power. In our next chapter, we will walk through Caesar's year as consul, how he governs, how he navigates opposition, and how, with quiet persistence, he sets the stage for his greatest campaigns to come. The year is 59 BC. Rome rises each morning to the steady rhythm of its public life. The sun casting long shadows down the forum's marble columns, the chatter of vendors in the marketplace, the shuffling of sandals on stone as citizens gather for the day's business. At the center of it all, newly elected consul Gaius Julius Caesar steps into the Curia, the Senate House, carrying not only the authority of his office, but the weight of the alliances that brought him here. The consulship is the Republic's highest annual magistracy. 2 consuls serve together, each with equal power, their terms lasting just 1 year. Caesar shares the office with Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus, a staunch conservative aligned with the Optimates. Their partnership is, in truth, no partnership at all. From the beginning, Bibulus opposes nearly every measure Caesar proposes. Caesar is undeterred. He uses his year to push through a series of measures that fulfill his promises to Pompey and Crassus. Pompey's veterans receive the land grants they were promised after years of service. Crassus secures favorable revisions to tax contracts in the eastern provinces. And beyond these deals, Caesar introduces legislation aimed at easing economic burdens for ordinary citizens, including a law regulating the publication of senatorial proceedings to make political actions more transparent. Bibulus resists each proposal, often attempting to block legislation through procedural delays. At one point, after a heated confrontation, Bibulus withdraws from public life altogether, retreating to his home and declaring that he will watch the skies for omens, a religious formality that, in theory, could halt political business. In practice, Caesar continues as though Bibulus does not exist. The people begin to joke that the year is not one of Caesar and Bibulus, but of Caesar and Julius. It is a subtle but telling shift, a reminder that political perception can be as powerful as formal authority. Outside the Senate, Caesar strengthens his public standing. He marries Calpurnia, the daughter of a powerful senator, further weaving himself into the city's network of alliances. At the same time, he arranges a marriage between his daughter Julia and Pompey, a personal union that cements their political alliance with genuine affection between the pair. The consulship also gives Caesar the opportunity to look beyond his single year in office. Tradition dictates that a consul, after serving, is assigned a provincial governorship. Through careful negotiation, Caesar secures not one province but three: Cisalpine Gaul, northern Italy, Illyricum on the Adriatic coast, and soon after Transalpine Gaul, modern southern France. The command comes with legions under his authority and a term of several years, far longer than the single year of the consulship. This arrangement is not merely a posting. It is the foundation of a power base outside Rome. From these provinces, Caesar will have direct control over armies, access to resources, and the freedom to act without the daily interference of the Senate. The year moves steadily forward. The heat of summer ripens the city's air with the smell of baked clay and dust. In the shaded colonnades, citizens discuss the consul's boldness, some with admiration, others with concern. Caesar's critics accuse him of disregarding tradition, of bending the republic's structures to his will. His supporters see a leader who acts decisively, delivering on promises in a way few politicians manage. By the close of his term, Caesar has accomplished more than most consuls in living memory. He has rewarded his allies, secured his next command, and maintained public favor. Yet he leaves behind a city divided, the Senate weary, the optimates openly hostile, and his political opponents waiting for the chance to challenge him. Still, as he prepares to depart for Gaul in the spring of 58 BCE, Caesar understands that the stage ahead is broader than the Forum or the Curia. In the provinces, far from the marble steps of Rome, he will command soldiers directly, negotiate with tribal leaders, and face enemies whose loyalties shift like the wind across the hills. What begins as a governorship will become a military epic, one that will bring him wealth, loyalty, and a level of influence no other Roman of his time can match. In our next chapter, we will step with him into Gaul, to the green fields and dense forests, to the slow rivers and distant mountains, and begin the long, measured account of how Caesar transforms from a political figure into one of the greatest generals Rome has ever known. The spring of 58 BCE brings Caesar northward, away from Rome's marble and politics, into the lands that will define the next stage of his life, Gaul. The air grows cooler as he leaves the warm plains of central Italy behind. The roads stretch ahead in long, straight lines, lined with poplars swaying in the breeze. Behind him, the Forum's debates fade into memory. Ahead lies a frontier where Rome's influence meets the shifting alliances of tribal kings and chieftains. His new provinces, Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and Transalpine Gaul, are not empty spaces on a map. They are a patchwork of Roman colonies, allied tribes, and independent peoples, each with their own customs, rivalries, and grudges. The Roman presence is strong in the south, but northward and westward lie lands where authority is contested. Almost as soon as he arrives, Caesar is faced with a challenge that will mark the true beginning of his Gallic campaigns. A large tribal group, the Helvetii, begins migrating westward. Their movement threatens Roman allies in the region and risks destabilizing the delicate balance of power. To Rome, the migration is both a security concern and an opportunity, a chance for Caesar to demonstrate the value of his command. The response is methodical. He calls his legions to muster, their shields and spears catching the pale sunlight of the early campaigning season. The sound of their boots on packed earth, the low murmur of commands, the clink of armor, all of it forms the steady rhythm of an army in motion. In these early operations, Caesar begins to shape the style that will define his leadership. He moves quickly, often covering surprising distances in short spans of time, using speed as much as force to unsettle opponents. Yet he is also deliberate, ensuring that roads, supply lines, and fortified camps are secured at every step. An army that marches hungry or exposed is an army that cannot win. The Helvetii, meeting resistance, attempt to negotiate passage. Caesar listens, weighs their words, and ultimately refuses, citing the danger to Rome's allies. The decision leads to a series of engagements, culminating in a decisive confrontation that scatters the Helvetii and reasserts Roman dominance in the region. With this success, Caesar sends a detailed report back to the Senate, framed not simply as a military victory, but as a defense of Rome's security and honor. He understands that every campaign is fought on two fronts, one on the ground and one in the minds of those back in the capital. His attention soon shifts to another pressing matter. The Germanic leader Ariovistus has crossed the Rhine into Gaul, bringing with him a following of warriors whose presence alarms both Rome and the Gallic tribes. Some tribes appeal to Caesar for assistance, seeing in him a counterweight to the growing Germanic influence. The confrontation with Ariovistus is as much about diplomacy as arms. Caesar meets him in parley, seeking to avoid unnecessary conflict but standing firm on Rome's authority. The talks fail, neither man willing to yield. When battle comes, it is fierce but short, ending with Ariovistus retreating across the Rhine. These early victories serve several purposes. They secure Rome's allies, demonstrate the reach of Caesar's command, and, crucially, bind his legions to him through shared success. In Rome, the reports of his actions elevate his stature, turning him from a competent politician into a figure of growing renown. The pace of life in Gaul is different from the Senate's calendar. Campaign seasons follow the weather, spring for marching, summer for sieges and field battles, autumn for securing supplies, and winter for the long months in fortified quarters. In winter, Caesar often returns to Cisalpine Gaul, close enough to Italy to keep an ear on the politics of Rome, yet still within the bounds of his provincial command. These winters are not idle. He cultivates alliances with local elites, settles disputes among tribes, and strengthens the roads and fortifications that keep the provinces stable. Each year, the legions are drilled and prepared anew, their loyalty reinforced by Caesar's presence and attention to their needs. By the close of these first years, Caesar has transformed his command from a political appointment into a power base. The legions under him are not just soldiers. They are a force bound by discipline, shared experience, and personal loyalty to their commander. In Gaul, he is not one among many politicians. He is the central figure, the one who decides when and where the legions move, the one whose judgment shapes the lives of thousands. And yet, this is only the beginning. Beyond the rivers and hills lie other tribes, other leaders watching the rise of Roman power with suspicion. Conflicts smolder, alliances shift, and opportunities appear like sparks in the dry grass. In our next chapter, we will follow Caesar deeper into Gaul, where the campaigns grow larger, the stakes higher, and his name begins to carry the weight not only of victory, but of something greater. The sense that here, on the far edges of the Republic, he is building a legacy. The early victories against the Helvetii and Ariovistus have given Caesar more than secure borders. They have given him momentum, and in the politics of both war and Rome, momentum is a currency as valuable as gold. The year is 57 BCE, and the spring air in Gaul carries the scent of damp earth and the distant bloom of meadow flowers. The land is green and open in places that elsewhere thick forests stand like walls, their canopies filtering the sunlight into shifting patterns on the ground. Beneath those trees, alliances are whispered, and the names of tribes, some friendly, some hostile, become part of Caesar's daily calculations. His next campaign is against the Belgae, a coalition of tribes in the north whose strength and unity make them a formidable force. They are said to be the bravest of the Gauls, their lives shaped by constant war with neighbors across the Rhine. Caesar moves swiftly, gathering intelligence and marching north before the Belgae can fully prepare. The campaign unfolds with the precision of an engineer's plan. Fortified camps are established at each stage, supply lines are secured, and the legions advance in measured steps. When battle comes, it is fierce, the Belgic warriors charging with a momentum born of courage and desperation. But the Roman formations hold, their discipline turning the tide. Some tribes submit quickly, preferring Rome's protection to further losses. Others resist, retreating into fortified towns. Sieges follow, and here Caesar's methodical approach is on full display. Earthworks are raised, trenches dug, walls undermined until the defenders are forced to yield. By the end of the campaign season, the Belgic threat is broken, and Rome's influence has pushed deeper into the north. Caesar sends his account of events back to Rome in the form of commentary, clear, concise reports that read as much like history as dispatches. These writings are as strategic as any battlefield maneuver, shaping public perception and ensuring that the Senate and people hear of his successes in his own words. The next year, 56 BCE, brings challenges in the west. The Veneti, a seafaring people along the Atlantic coast, control vital trade routes and have detained Roman envoys. Caesar responds with a campaign unlike any he has faced so far, one fought not on land, but at sea. Roman ships are hastily built and adapted to the tides and currents of the unfamiliar waters. The Veneti's vessels are sturdy, with high sides and leather sails, designed for the rough Atlantic winds. The Romans, adapting quickly, used grappling hooks to seize the enemy's rigging, immobilizing their ships and forcing surrender. The victory is decisive, but it also serves as a warning to other tribes that Rome's reach extends beyond the rivers and roads. From the coastal winds to the inland hills, Caesar's presence is felt. Yet Gaul is never still. In 55 BCE, two more challenges arise, both from beyond the Rhine. Germanic tribes, the Usipetes and Tencteri, cross into Gaul seeking new lands. Caesar confronts them, and after tense negotiations break down, his legions move with swift and overwhelming force, driving them back across the river. In the same year, Caesar makes a bold demonstration of Roman capability by crossing the Rhine itself. Bridges are built, massive wooden structures that rise from the water in a matter of days, a feat as much symbolic as strategic. The message is clear. There is no boundary the legions cannot cross if Rome wills it. That summer, he also undertakes another unprecedented move, a brief expedition across the Channel to Britain. The journey is challenging, the tides and weather unpredictable, and the Roman foothold there is temporary. But like the crossing of the Rhine, it is a gesture that expands the image of Roman reach, both to the peoples of Gaul and to the Senate in Rome. Through these years, a pattern emerges. Caesar does not simply defeat enemies, he incorporates them, making allies where possible, settling disputes in ways that bind new territories to Rome's sphere. Each campaign adds to his reputation not just as a commander, but as a leader whose influence extends beyond the battlefield. By 54 BCE, his position in Gaul is strong, but the demands of such a vast command grow heavier. The loyalty of the legions is firm, yet maintaining supply, discipline, and order across such distances requires constant attention. And in the background, Rome itself is shifting. Alliances there are not as stable as those in his army. The first triumvirate begins to strain under competing ambitions, and events in the capital will soon pull at the edges of Caesar's authority. For now, though, as winter settles over Gaul and the legions make camp, Caesar can look back on nearly 4 years of continuous expansion. He has turned a governorship into a conquest, and a conquest into a personal empire in all but name. In our next chapter, we will follow him into the most turbulent phase of his Gallic campaigns, when rebellion rises, loyalties fracture, and Caesar must hold his position against the greatest challenge he will face before Rome itself calls him home. The winter of 54 to 53 BCE settles cold and heavy over Gaul. The legions are spread across their winter quarters, their camps orderly and fortified, their daily drills keeping the rhythm of discipline even in the quieter months. But beyond the campfires, unrest begins to stir. The spark is small at first, isolated uprisings among tribes weary of Roman demands for grain, tribute, and hostages. But the resentment runs deep, and soon the spark becomes a flame. In 52 BCE, the tribes of Gaul unite under a single leader, Vercingetorix of the Arverda. His name carries authority among the Gauls, and his strategy is unlike those Caesar has faced before. Rather than meeting the legions in open battle, Vercingetorix adopts a policy of scorched earth, burning crops, destroying supplies. Denying Caesar's armies the resources they need to move freely, the effect is immediate. Fields that once promised grain are blackened stubble. Villages that could have served as shelter are reduced to ash. The landscape itself becomes an ally to the Gauls. Caesar responds with the speed that has always been his strength. He marched relentlessly, striking at smaller forces where he can, keeping the rebellion from spreading unchecked. But the campaign reaches its critical moment at Elisa, a hilltop stronghold where Vercingetorix withdraws with his army. The position is formidable. Steep slopes protect the town, and the surrounding land offers few easy approaches. A direct assault would be costly, perhaps impossible. So Caesar chooses another path. The legions begin an immense engineering project, a circumvallation, a complete ring of fortifications encircling Alesia, designed to seal the defenders inside. Ditches are dug, walls raised, towers constructed at intervals so that watch can be kept day and night. But Caesar knows the danger is not only from within. Word has gone out across Gaul, calling for allies to relieve the siege. To protect against attacks from outside, the legions build a second ring of fortifications contravallation facing outward, ready to meet any rescue attempt. It is a feat of scale and precision, more than 10 miles of double fortifications built in hostile territory under constant threat. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix waits, supplies dwindling, trusting that relief will come. And it does. Tens of thousands of Gauls gather to break the siege, attacking the outer walls while those inside attempt to strike from within. For days, the fighting surges against both lines, but the Roman fortifications hold. At last, the relief force breaks and scatters. With no hope remaining, Vercingetorix rides out to meet Caesar. Accounts say he appears in full armor, then lays down his weapons at Caesar's feet. Whether this moment happened exactly as later writers describe, its meaning is clear. The united resistance of Gaul has been broken. The victory at Alesia is more than a military triumph. It is the culmination of years of campaigning, the moment that secures Rome's dominance in Gaul for generations to come. It also secures Caesar's position as one of the greatest generals of his age, but it comes at a cost. The campaign has been long and costly for both sides. Many towns lie in ruins. The population has suffered through years of war and scarcity. Even for Rome, the conquest brings the challenge of governing a vast, newly subdued territory. As winter falls again, the legions settle into quarters. Their commander turning his attention to the reports he will send to Rome, accounts that blend the facts of the campaign with the shaping of his legacy. Yet while Gaul grows quiet, Rome does not. The political alliance that once supported him is fraying. Crassus is dead, Pompey grows closer to the Optimates, and the Senate watches Caesar's growing power with unease. The Gallic Wars have given Caesar everything: wealth, fame, an army whose loyalty is to him personally. But they have also created the tension that will soon draw him back to Italy, not in peace, but in a march that will shake the Republic itself. In our next chapter, we will follow Caesar from the fields of Gaul back toward Rome. As the long rivalry between him and Pompey moves from the Senate floor to the open road. The year is 50 BCE, and Gaul is quiet at last. The long campaigns are over. Roman control is secure, the fortresses rebuilt, the roads patrolled. In the winter camps, the legions drill and rest, their loyalty to Caesar, a bond forged over years of shared hardship and victory. But across the Alps, Rome is anything but quiet. The Senate, led by Caesar's political opponents and the Optimates, grows increasingly uneasy with his power. Pompey, once his ally through the first triumvirate, has drifted toward the conservative faction. The death of Crassus years earlier has removed the third pillar of their alliance, and now the balance that once held the three men together is gone. The immediate issue is Caesar's command. His term as governor is ending, and the Senate orders him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. To do so would mean surrendering the immunity from prosecution he holds as a magistrate in office. Caesar knows that his enemies are ready to bring charges against him the moment he steps into the city without that protection. Pompey, now effectively the Senate's leading general, is given control of forces to defend the Republic. The divide between the two former allies is complete. Negotiations are attempted, letters exchanged, but the underlying mistrust is too deep. Caesar offers to disband his army if Pompey does the same. The Senate refuses. The decision becomes clear: either submit to his enemy's judgment or defy the Senate's order. The winter air is cold and sharp in 49 BCE when Caesar brings his army south from Gaul to the small river known as the Rubicon, the legal boundary between his provincial command and Italy proper. Crossing it with an army is an act of war. The scene, as later writers imagine it, is quiet but heavy with meaning. The river is narrow, its water dark under the gray sky. Caesar pauses, knowing that once he steps across, there is no path back to the politics of compromise. The choice is final. He is said to murmur, "Alia iacta est," the die is cast, and then he rides forward. The legions follow, their shields and standards reflecting the dim light, their boots pressing into the damp earth of Italy. Word travels quickly. In Rome, the Senate reacts with alarm. Pompey and many senators leave the city, moving south to gather forces in the provinces. Caesar advances steadily, meeting little resistance as towns open their gates to him. His reputation and the discipline of his army make the prospect of opposition less appealing to many. This march is not a reckless dash. It is measured, deliberate, each movement securing supply lines, each town brought under control without unnecessary destruction. Caesar frames his actions as a defense of his rights and those of the tribunes who supported him, casting himself not as a usurper, but as a protector of the people's authority. By the time winter turns toward spring, he holds Rome itself without a pitched battle, but the civil war is only beginning. Pompey has withdrawn to Greece, where he can draw on the resources of Rome's eastern provinces. Caesar must choose whether to consolidate his position in Italy or pursue his rival across the sea. He chooses pursuit, a decision that will take him from the streets of the capital to the shores of Epirus, from swift campaigns in Spain to the decisive clash at Pharsalus, where one of the Republic's most significant turning points will unfold. Standing on the banks of the Rubicon, the choice may have seemed a single step, but in truth, it was the beginning of a march that would reshape Rome itself, its politics, its armies, and the place of one man at its center. In our next chapter, we will follow Caesar through the civil war, across the seas and battlefields, to the moment when Pompey falls and the Republic takes on a new shape, one that will carry Caesar to the height of his power, and inevitably to the shadow of his end. The winter mists over the Rubicon have long since lifted. The step Caesar took into Italy has carried him far first to Rome, now beyond, into a conflict that stretches across provinces and seas. The year is 49 BCE, and the Republic is divided. Pompey holds the east, his fleets controlling the Mediterranean routes. his legions drawing strength from the wealthy provinces of Greece and Asia Minor. Caesar controls Italy and much of Spain, but the balance is not yet decided. Before turning east, Caesar moves with characteristic swiftness to secure Spain, where Pompey's allies command strong forces. The campaign is deliberate, focused not on destruction but on breaking the will of the opposing armies. Several engagements follow, but often the enemy commanders surrender rather than fight Caesar in open battle. It is in this campaign that he speaks the words later remembered, "I am fighting to win, not to kill." It is a sentiment that reinforces his image as a leader who values clemency, even in civil war. With Spain secure, Caesar returns to Rome briefly. The forum is quieter now, many senators absent, but the machinery of the state still turns. From here, he turns his attention eastward, to the heart of Pompey's strength. In the early months of 48 BCE, Caesar sails for Greece. The voyage is hazardous. Pompey's navy prowls the waters, and storms scatter parts of his fleet. For a time, Caesar is stranded with only a fraction of his forces, but instead of retreating, he establishes a foothold and waits patiently for reinforcements to arrive. The two armies shadow each other through the hills and plains of Epirus, each seeking the advantage. Pompey has the larger force and the stronger position, but Caesar relies on the mobility and discipline of his legions. Months pass in this measured dance, supply lines tested, patience trained. The standoff ends at Pharsalus in central Greece. The day is clear, the field open, and both armies deploy in full view of one another. Pompey's troops outnumber Caesar's nearly 2-1. Many in the Senate, watching from Pompey's side, expect the battle to end the war in their favor. But when the fighting begins, Caesar's experience and his soldiers' training make the difference. His lines hold against the initial charge, then counterattack with precision. Pompey's army begins to falter, and once their formation breaks, the defeat is decisive. Pompey does not remain to rally his men. He flees the field, making for the coast, and then by sea to Egypt, seeking refuge under the young pharaoh Ptolemy XIII. But the welcome he hopes for does not come. The Egyptians, calculating that Caesar will soon arrive in pursuit, choose to eliminate their guest. Pompey is killed before Caesar reaches Alexandria. When Caesar does arrive, he is presented with Pompey's severed head, a gesture meant to secure his favor. Instead, he turns away, reportedly weeping at the sight. The rivalry between them had been bitter, but Pompey was a great Roman still, and his end, far from home, strikes Caesar deeply. In Egypt, Caesar becomes entangled in the kingdom's own succession crisis. It is here he meets Cleopatra VII, who is vying for power against her brother. Their alliance, political and personal, will shape the years to come, but for now, his focus remains on securing stability in the East. With Pompey gone, much of the Senate's resistance collapses. But not all. Scattered opposition remains in Africa and Spain, and Caesar will spend the next years methodically bringing these regions under his control. By the close of this phase of the war, he is master of the Roman world in all but name. His clemency toward defeated opponents, combined with his unbroken string of victories, gives him a position no general in the Republic has held before. But his dominance also changes the shape of the Republic itself. The old balance of power between Senate, magistrates, and people has shifted. And while Caesar's control brings stability in the short term, it also creates the question that will define the years ahead. Can the Republic survive when one man holds so much authority? In our next chapter, we will follow Caesar's return to Rome, to the honors he receives, the reforms he begins, and the uneasy admiration and suspicion that mark his final years before the Ides of March. The wars are not yet entirely over, but by 46 BCE, Caesar's path back to Rome is clearer. He returns not as a fugitive or a faction leader, but as the undisputed master of the Republic. The city greets him with ceremony. Triumphal processions wind through the streets, displaying the spoils of his victories in Gaul, his campaigns in Egypt, and his successes against the remaining opposition in Africa. The air is filled with music, the scent of incense, and the murmur of crowds pressed shoulder to shoulder along the Via Sacra. Yet beneath the celebration lies a quieter truth. The old order is gone. The Senate still meets, laws are still passed, but real authority now rests in Caesar's hands. The title given to him is dictator, at first for a fixed term, then extended, until finally it is declared for life. In the Republic's earlier days, dictators were appointed only in emergencies, holding absolute power for a matter of months before stepping down. Caesar's tenure stretches far beyond that tradition, blurring the line between temporary necessity and permanent rule. In office, he moves quickly to enact reforms. Many are practical, addressing problems that had troubled Rome for years. Debts are restructured to ease the strain on citizens. The calendar is reformed, the Julian calendar, aligning the year with the solar cycle, a system whose influence will last long after his death. Colonies are established to settle veterans and relieve overcrowding in the city. The grain dole is reorganized to curb corruption. These measures bring genuine benefits, but they also consolidate his position. Appointments once decided through senatorial debate are now made at his discretion. Provincial governors serve at his pleasure. Magistrates defer to his judgment. The public face of his rule is one of clemency. Many former enemies are pardoned, welcomed back into the political life of the city. Some accept with gratitude, others with quiet resentment, seeing the gesture as a display of dominance. The honors given to Caesar grow in number and in weight. His image appears on coins, a break with Republican tradition, where only the faces of gods and ancestors were struck in silver and gold. Statues of him are placed among those of the gods in temples. He is granted the right to wear the laurel wreath at all times, a symbol of victory, and some whisper, a way to hide a receding hairline that had become the subject of jest. But as his authority expands, so does the unease among the old aristocracy. The Republic had been built on the idea that no one man could hold too much power for too long. To many senators, Caesar's position, though won through popular support and military success, looks less like stewardship and more like monarchy. He seems aware of the danger. In public, he refuses the title of king when it is offered. At festivals, he makes gestures of humility, standing among the people rather than apart from them. But the suspicion remains. Every honor voted to him, every sign of his singular position, feeds the fear that the Republic is slipping into something else entirely. Amid these tensions, Caesar continues to plan for the future. He looks toward campaigns in the east against Parthia to avenge the defeat of Crassus at Cirrhae. He speaks of building infrastructure, draining marshes, expanding the city's capacity to feed its population. His vision for Rome is vast, but the time to realize it is short. For among those who walk the marble halls of the Senate, there are men who believe that only one act can preserve the Republic. Some are former allies. Some are those he pardoned. They speak in private rooms, in gardens shaded from the street, their words carrying the weight of decision. For now, the city moves through its days in a strange balance, half in celebration of the man who has brought peace, half in quiet uncertainty about what that peace means. In our next chapter, we will walk through those final weeks of Caesar's life, from the signs and omens spoken of later, to the morning of the Ides of March, when the balance will finally break. The early months of 44 BCE pass under a soft Roman winter sky. The chill in the air is tempered by the anticipation of spring, and the city moves with the same rhythm it has for centuries, markets opening at dawn, priests tending altars, senators gathering beneath the high ceilings of the Curia. For Caesar, these weeks are filled with work. He plans new legislation, reviews preparations for the Eastern campaign against Parthia, and continues to manage the vast network of appointments, decrees, and reforms that his rule demands. From the outside, life appears orderly, but beneath the surface, a quiet resolve has taken root among some of those closest to him. They are men of rank and influence, many of them bound to Caesar by past favors or by the clemency he granted after the Civil War. And yet, in whispered conversations held away from the bustle of the forum, they share a single conviction that the Republic will not survive if one man holds such power without limit. Marcus Junius Brutus, respected for his intellect and probity, is among them. So too is Gaius Cassius Longinus, a seasoned soldier and politician, and Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus, a trusted lieutenant in Caesar's campaigns. They believe that by removing Caesar, they will restore the old balance of the Republic. Rumors of discontent drift through the city, but they are indistinct, easy to dismiss in the noise of daily politics. Caesar himself seems unworried. Perhaps he trusts too much in the loyalty he has shown others. Perhaps the pace of his duties leaves little time for suspicion. Ancient accounts speak of omens in the days before the Ides. A soothsayer warned Caesar to beware that date. His wife, Calpurnia, dreams of his statue running with blood. He is said to waver on the morning itself, considering whether to remain at home. But Decimus persuades him to attend the Senate, reminding him of the business at hand and the importance of appearing confident. The day is bright, the air crisp as he makes his way through the city. The streets are alive with the usual movement, citizens calling greetings, officials stepping aside as he passes. He wears the laurel wreath, its green leaves catching the light. The meeting is held not in the traditional Senate house, which is under renovation, but in the Theater of Pompey, in a chamber whose walls have heard many debates, but never the one about to unfold. Inside, the senators rise as Caesar enters. He takes his seat, and the day's business begins. Then, slowly, the circle around him tightens. One senator approaches with a petition, drawing Caesar's attention. Another steps closer, then another. Hands reach out, pulling at his robe. The first blow falls, and then the others follow, swift and inescapable. It is over in moments. Caesar collapses at the base of the statue of Pompey, the man who was once his ally and later his rival. Whether he truly spoke to Brutus et tu, Brute, or whether the words are the later invention of poets, the image remains fixed in the memory of history. The senators leave quickly, their work done. Outside, the city does not yet know. Life goes on in the markets, in the forums, in the shaded courtyards of private homes. But by nightfall, Rome will be a city divided between those who believe the Republic has been saved and those who see only the violent loss of the man who brought it stability. In the silence that follows, Caesar's body lies where it fell, the air heavy with the scent of wax and stone, and the uncertainty of what will come next. In our next chapter, we will follow the days after the Ides of March, how the city responds, how the Senate struggles to regain control, and how the absence of Caesar creates the very chaos his killers hope to prevent. The day after the Ides of March dawns over a Rome that feels strangely hollow. The marble streets are the same, the Tiber still flows beneath its stone bridges, but something in the air has shifted. The man who for years shaped the Republic's every major decision is gone, and no clear successor stands in his place. The Senate meets in uncertainty. The conspirators Brutus, Cassius, and their allies move cautiously, knowing that while they hold the Senate chamber, they do not hold the hearts of the Roman people. Their justification is simple. They claim they have freed Rome from tyranny. But for many citizens, Caesar was not a tyrant. He was a benefactor, a reformer, the man who brought stability after years of civil war. Crowds gather in the forum, not in open revolt, but with a quiet, tense curiosity. They want to know what comes next, whether the grain supply will hold, whether the laws Caesar passed will remain. The days pass in uneasy compromise. Mark Antony, Caesar's trusted colleague and co-consul at the time of his death, positions himself as mediator between the Senate and the Caesarian loyalists. He secures an agreement. Caesar's laws and appointments will remain valid, and in return, the conspirators will not be punished for the assassination. But the fragile peace begins to splinter when it comes time for Caesar's funeral. It is held in the Forum, the rostra draped in black, the bier surrounded by trophies from his campaigns. Mark Antony delivers the eulogy, his voice carrying across the crowd. He reads Caesar's will, revealing generous gifts to the people of Rome and naming his great-nephew Gaius Octavius, known to us as Octavian, as his adopted son and principal heir. The generosity of the will, combined with Antony's careful reminder of Caesar's victories and clemency, turns the mood of the crowd. Anger swells, first as murmurs, then as shouts. Before the day is done, the funeral has become a rallying point for those who demand justice for Caesar's death. The conspirators, sensing the change, leave Rome for the safety of the provinces. They had hoped to restore the Republic, but their actions have instead created a power vacuum. Into that vacuum steps Octavian. He is only 19, studying abroad when news of Caesar's death reaches him. His return to Italy is quiet, deliberate, not the march of a general, but the steady progress of someone who knows his claim rests on more than military force. As Caesar's legal heir, he inherits not only wealth, but the loyalty of many veterans and officials. Mark Antony initially underestimates him. The young man seems polite, almost deferential, accepting guidance while quietly building alliances of his own. In the months that follow, Octavian begins to gather Caesar's supporters, presenting himself as the rightful continuation of Caesar's legacy. By the end of 44 BCE, it is clear that the Republic is not returning to the balance the conspirators imagined. Instead, a new struggle is forming between Antony, Octavian, and the scattered forces of Brutus and Cassius. What began as an act meant to preserve the Republic has set Rome on the path to another civil war. For now, Octavian's rise is still in its early stages, his position not yet secure. But the quiet, measured way in which he advances, always invoking the name of Caesar, always presenting himself as the heir not just by law but by spirit, marks him as a force to be reckoned with. In our next chapter, we will follow the final phase of this transformation, how the alliances shift, how Antony and Octavian briefly join forces against Caesar's assassins, and how the Republic, already fragile, moves closer to becoming something entirely new. The year is 43 BCE, and the political map of Rome is fractured. Brutus and Cassius, the principal conspirators in Caesar's assassination, have retreated to the eastern provinces, raising armies and securing allies. Mark Antony holds sway over much of the West, using his position as consul and his personal connection to Caesar to command loyalty. And Octavian young, careful, and underestimated by many moves between factions, always invoking his status as Caesar's heir. The Senate, wary of Antony's growing power, aligns itself temporarily with Octavian. This uneasy alliance sends both men against Antony in a brief but decisive confrontation at Mutina, where Antony's forces are driven back. Yet victory brings not unity, but another shift in the balance. With Antony weakened, Octavian turns on the Senate itself, marching on Rome to demand the consulship. He is not refused. It is from this position of authority that Octavian makes his most unexpected move. He reconciles with Antony. The two, along with Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, form the Second Triumvirate, a legally established body with extraordinary powers to restore the Republic. In practice, it is a joint dictatorship, with the power to make laws without Senate approval and to appoint magistrates at will. One of their first acts is grim. the publication of prescriptions. These lists name political enemies whose lives and properties are forfeit. Some are old rivals, others simply wealthy enough to be useful targets. Among the most famous is Cicero, once Rome's greatest orator, whose sharp criticisms of Antony seal his fate. His death marks a sobering moment, a reminder that the Republic's old safeguards are gone. With their position in Rome secured, the triumvirs turn to the task of avenging Caesar's death. The campaign takes them east, where Brutus and Cassius command substantial forces. The two armies meet in 42 BCE on the plains near Philippi in Macedonia. The fighting is intense, spread over 2 battles in quick succession. In the first, Brutus's forces gain an advantage against Octavian, while Antony defeats Cassius. Believing Brutus defeated as well, Cassius takes his own life. In the second battle, Brutus is overcome, and he too chooses death over capture. With the defeat of the conspirators, Caesar's assassination is avenged. But the victory does not restore stability. Instead, it removes the last major opposition to the triumvirate's dominance. The alliance between Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus holds for a time, dividing the Roman world into spheres of influence. Antony governs the east, where he deepens his alliance with Cleopatra of Egypt. Octavian controls the west, focusing on consolidating his power in Italy and settling Caesar's veterans on new lands. Lepidus, given Africa, soon fades from real influence. The partnership between Octavian and Antony is never one of trust. Distance magnifies their differences, and in Rome, Octavian quietly works to undermine his colleague. He portrays Antony as a man seduced by Eastern luxury, too close to Cleopatra, too distant from Roman traditions. The propaganda seeps into public opinion, making Antony's position increasingly precarious. By 32 BCE, the alliance collapses entirely. Octavian seizes Antony's will from the Vestal Virgins, whether by lawful means or not, and reveals its contents to the Senate. The will leaves lands and titles to Cleopatra's children and requests to be buried in Alexandria rather than Rome. To Octavian, this is proof that Antony has placed Egypt above the Republic. The Senate declares war not directly on Antony, but on Cleopatra, framing the conflict as a defense of Rome against a foreign queen. In reality, it is the final civil war of the Republic, pitting Octavian's forces against Antony and Cleopatra together. The decisive moment comes at Actium in 31 BCE. It is a naval battle fought off the coast of Greece. Octavian's fleet commanded by Marcus Agrippa. The fighting is steady and controlled until Cleopatra's ships suddenly break away from the engagement. Antony follows her, and with their departure, the cohesion of his fleet collapses. The following year, Octavian pursues them to Egypt. Alexandria falls, and both Antony and Cleopatra take their own lives rather than face capture. With their deaths, Octavian stands alone as the uncontested ruler of the Roman world. There is no Senate faction strong enough to oppose him, no rival general with an army to challenge him. The dust of battle has settled. The marble streets of Rome are quiet once more, though the echoes of civil war still linger in memory. In the Forum, senators still meet, magistrates still take their oaths, and the rituals of the Republic are observed. But behind the familiar forms, everything has changed. Octavian, now without rival, moves carefully in the final years of the 1st century BCE. He does not call himself king nor dictator, titles that had stirred fear and resistance in the days of his adoptive father. Instead, in 27 BCE, he accepts from the Senate the title Augustus, a name that carries no single office, but an aura of authority, sanctioned by the people and the state alike. The Republic is not formally abolished, but its spirit is transformed. The Senate continues. Laws are passed, elections held, but real power rests with the princeps, the first citizen, who commands the loyalty of the legions. controls the provinces, and directs the life of the state. It is a structure built on lessons learned in the years we have traced, from the restless streets of the Suburra, where a young Caesar watched Rome's life unfold, through the measured march of his political rise, the long campaigns in Gaul, the crossing of the Rubicon, and the civil wars that redrew the map of power. In the quiet, we can look back and see how each step was shaped by the same forces: ambition and necessity, loyalty and rivalry, the delicate balance between personal command and the traditions of the state. Caesar's rise did not end with his death. It set in motion the events that made Augustus possible, and with him, the Roman Empire. The city that once resisted the rule of kings would, within a generation, become the capital of an empire stretching from Britain to Egypt. The Forum would still hear debates, but now they were framed within boundaries set by one man's will. Legions would still march, but they would march for the emperor. And so, as we let the story settle into its final stillness, we return to the beginning, to the pale light over the rooftops of Rome in the year 100 BCE, where a boy named Gaius Julius Caesar stepped into the streets of the Suburra, his life unwritten, the future unknowable. From that morning to this ending, the arc of his rise has been one of constant movement, not always forward, but always toward the center of Rome's history. Even in death, his presence shaped the Republic's fate. Now, in the quiet after the telling, you might let the names and dates fade, letting the sound of the Tiber's slow current replace them, the clatter of hooves on stone streets fading into distance. Imagine the sun setting behind the Capitoline Hill, the city bathed in warm light, its marble temples glowing softly before night comes. In that calm, the story rests, a reminder how lives, no matter how powerful, are threads in a larger tapestry. And as the streets grow dark and the lamps are lit, you can close your eyes knowing the journey has come full circle. Sleep now and let the world of Caesar drift away, its echoes fading into the deep, peaceful quiet of history.